Welcome everyone to our December board meeting. Call this meeting to order. If you would please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here.
Mike?
Here.
Russ?
Here.
Dennis?
Here.
Joe?
Here.
Amy? Here. We are all here tonight. First up is our student highlights, which is also one of our #1 highlights of our meetings each month. First, we will start with the high school, and Mr. Wood and Miss Burns are not here tonight, so Steph, Mrs. Davis, you're up. Each student of the month will also be receiving a $15 gift card to Jersey Mike's, and it is the Fort Gratiot location north of Fort Huron. So.
Sorry, I stayed casual. It's holiday week at the high school, so I'm taking every little bit I can get. My name is Stephanie Davis, and I have been at the high school. I think this is my 5th year, but my 19th year overall. And I am extremely honored and pleasured to nominate Derek Strebel as our Student of the Month. Derek has been my student now for a couple of years in 2 different situations, one in a teaming chemistry class, and then in our support class. And I just had to tell Derek that I was extremely proud of how far he's come. In the first month of school, we kind of joke, and I'm like, you made it. Like, the light is at the end of the tunnel, Derek. We're on the countdown, and so every once in a while I'll say, this is your last December 13th ever in high school. But Derek has been so focused. His grades look amazing. He works so hard, but he has that silent intelligence that It just astonishes me. I didn't bring it today, Derek, because I know we talked about it today, but he wrote a sentence to go in one of his assignments, and it basically was something about changing a light bulb, and it was so far above anything I would have written that I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, I don't know, I don't think I can use it, but I'm like, I'm not throwing this away. So I saved it, I kept it, and it was just to see his growth in the last 4 years. He is that silent smart. Like, he doesn't need to tell anybody, but we are blown away by his writings. We're blown away by his his work, and his persona is just so good. And he's very, very aware of his situations. We had a couple of class situations, and we try to do everything we can to like lead with love and different things with our students. And after one certain situation in class, Derek just looked at me and he says, and I'll never forget it, it was the best moment of my year so far, and he said, I envy your patience. And I was like, that's the nicest thing anybody's ever told me. Like, honestly, I will carry that forever. I thought it was the best compliment because he doesn't say much. He's that young man that when he talks, it means something because he doesn't say much at all. So, Derek, I'm super proud of you. I was so excited to be able to award this to you. So, Derek Strevel is this month for the high school students of the month. Come on. I almost forgot he was going to see me tonight until I reminded him on his way out. So this is yours. This is yours. I'm not going to shake yours. I know I'm not supposed to probably do that, but I did it.
Can we get a picture with the thing?
Yes.
Yes.
He's going to say no.
Brandon's definitely saying yes. I have my camera. You want me to
let him say no.
I know, right? Derek?
That's why I told him. He's going to say no. Yeah.
I wasn't going to give him that option. I would have done it tomorrow. You got to stand over here, Derek. You don't want me behind the podium.
That's right. And actually, if you can come somewhere around that screen, we can really get a double thanks for
Come on in, Derek.
Yeah, 2 hands with it.
There you go. You guys in? There you go.
Good job there. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Derek. Thank you, family. Next, we have Cros-Lex Elementary, and it will be Mrs. Jax and Mrs. Moody.
I'm going to have Mrs. Jax come up. She nominated our student of the month this month. There it is.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, we always appreciate so much these few moments to just say how much we appreciate the citizenship of our kids, the academics of our kids, and the same is true for James always. But what really struck me this month, being the month of kindness, being the month of December, James's heart, you know how the Grinch does that little heart measure thing and it just goes boing at the end? Well, you guys have been born with that thing like that, just need the heart break that little thing because his heart is just nuts. We have a little person who needs to always make sure she has juice. And if there's one juice in the box, that man needs to make sure that juice gets where it belongs. And the other day we had snow, right? Well, he did not want the rabbits to be cold. So they got a burrow, handmade by James, so that they would be nice and warm out on that playground, and I guess it was a good thing this snow. At least then they wouldn't be cold. But the best, and it's kind of like what Mrs. Davis was just talking about. You just get these little nuggets that you hang on to. So I'm trying to be helpful to James, right? He's in line. And he got a coat and he had a sweatshirt. And I said, oh no, James, I'll put that back so you don't have to get out of the lunch line, right? So I put it back. Did I put it in the right place? No, I didn't. Poor boy, at the end of the day. Mrs. James, I can't find my coat, James. Where's your coat? Where would it be? It's in your locker, right? Well, no, not in Mrs. Jack's house. That wasn't where it was. And the poor boy, he's like, I have no idea where that coat went. And struck me out of the blue. So, I go, oh, James, that's what I found. That's your coat, right? Do you remember what you told me.
That what ours, the grown-ups do. Sometimes they go on accident.
Sometimes things like that happen. And I just thought, oh my gosh, and the dimples? Yeah, that has to come. So if you're having a time where, even when you're trying to be helpful and it's not working out so well, I'm just going to remember that James said, sometimes things like that happen. And you say it with a smile because you mean it. He actually meant it. He wasn't just being sweet about it, but he always is. He really means it. That things like that do happen sometimes, and it's okay. With all of our crazy world, sometimes we seriously. But remember, with the dimple, things like that happen sometimes. Right, buddy? I'm so happy. I'm very proud of you for student of the month.
Nice job holding that proudly up. All right, I'm gonna look up with a big smile.
Nice.
Nice job, you're good at this. All right, 3, 1, 2, 3. Congratulations.
Next we have Mrs. Murray from Pioneer High School.
Pioneer High School Student of the Month is William Wesley. Come on up. This is not his favorite thing to do. William came to Pioneer High School last year, and the things that this individual has done this year has been unbelievable. Keeping up on his credits, working, going to Career Center. Just recently got his CDL through the Career Center. We are just so proud of the accomplishments he has been able to do this year. He is going to go many places once he graduates this year. We are so proud of just the sense of humor. When he comes in to work with us, he has that sense that he wants to do well. And he's just a pleasure to have at Pioneer High School. So congratulations, William.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Yeah, you're just like James. Nice job. Excellent. Congratulations.
Next we have Mrs. Gronowski and Mrs. Wilson from Meyer Elementary.
Thank you. I would like to welcome Mrs. Wilson to present Meyer's Student of the Month.
Thank you, Mrs. Ranowski. So I'm going to introduce the Student of the Month that came out of my 4th grade class. This is Reagan Heyer. And I cannot say enough about this young lady. If I could think of 3 words to describe her, they would be intelligent and hardworking and kind. She is new to our district, and the second she walked through the doors of my room, she was just this shining smile, this breath of fresh air, and she is just, every day she walks in, she is hardworking, she never gives up, and she is just a well-rounded person, not just a student, but a person in life. And she will help anyone that needs her help. She goes above and beyond and she often helps me throughout the day multiple times because I often forget a lot of things. And she's the first one to always say, Mrs. Wilson, we need you this, or we need you this next. And so I'm just very proud to have you in my room, and I can't thank you enough for being who you are. So I'm glad and honored and privileged to say that you are staying.
Good evening. I am Miss Oles, and I get the great privilege to introduce to you Ian Gross. Now, Ian, come on up here, bud. Yeah, come on up here. I had Ian as a virtual student last year, and he was always Johnny on spot in my little Zoom lessons. Any questions? I got a couple, Miss Oles. Great, let's go through them, bud. And so we would end up going through them. And so when his name came up, I said, well, I'll take the role in this. So I jotted down a few ideas about Ian, and then I emailed all of his teachers. And the perception was the same out of all of us. Ian is always engaged and cares about his learning. He is respectful, polite, hardworking, and responsible. And for many years, I have always dismissed my class with a simple, have a good day. This year, I now get a little bit of a response. You too, Miss Oles, or have a good day, Miss Oles, on his way out the door. So it's always very appreciative of that. So Ian, with your gentle soul, okay, you have a lot to offer this world. And I look forward to the day I can sit in my lounge chair, drink a cup of coffee, and open my newspaper and go, Ian Gross, that was one of ours. So congratulations on being Student of the Month.
Thank you to students and families and staff who continue to nominate and provide us with those children for the Student of the Month. It definitely is one of the highlights of the night, so thank you. Next on our agenda is the audience comments. If you would like to address the board, please come to the podium and state your name.
My name is Aiden Doug, and I'm a junior at the Croswell-Lexington High School here. Within the past month or so, since our previous board meeting, we've taken steps to be more inclusive between students here at our school, which is a good step, and our non-discrimination policy is now in effect. But we still have a lot of problems here, and within this year, since January, I've been in contact with Mr. Wood, the principal of my school, and with Mr. Goverson, and occasionally Ms. Burns, about what needed, what me and a few of my friends had been talking about regarding some sort of student collective. And within the past month, I've gotten a few more people who talk to me about this. And it seems like it's gotten worse within our past month. And I thought it would be the most appropriate time to say that we should shake things up or change things, because I don't personally think, and I don't think a lot of the students in the high school agree, that we're not getting anywhere. In fact, I think most of us think it's getting worse in the high school with how students are being treated. Within the past week alone, I've seen multiple cases of people harassing each other. There's one of the students who spoke here in the previous board meeting. I want to say her name is Savannah, who is confined to a wheelchair. Within the past week, I've seen her wheelchair kicked in the hallway at least 3 or 4 times. And it's been reported to the office, not just by me, but by other people, and nothing's happening. And our non-discrimination policy isn't working in those specific regards when they should be. And one of the things that within the past few weeks I've been looking at would be exactly what it was that I was talking to Mr. Gilbertson and Mr. Wood and Ms. Burns about, which is some sort of a student collective, which we've talked about, and I've talked with Mr. Gilbertson a few times between now and the beginning of the school year, and we looked for ways that we could try to get some sort of collective, and we could not find anything specific besides it would have to be organized as a club. Now, I have here a thing that I printed out earlier because I needed to remember what I was going to say, but not all of this is just going to be scripted. But I did want to read out a few of the things I said. I was going to get copies for all of you, but my printer decided to not work. So this paragraph on this says, the consensus that was held by me and 10 other students was held within the past month, and have indicated that an overwhelming majority of the pupils here feel misrepresented by the high school, and or feel like the school has placed some sort of target on them within the past 4 years, especially within these past 2 years. Many of the principles of this district are displayed as a grab for power and are in this way questionable. So, we asked 216 pupils in the high school verbally, and out of those 216, 187 of them said that they were in favor of a student collective being implemented as a replacement or some sort of connection to our student representative. As a corollary, a question was then asked what they would expect from that organization or collective, and a decent number of them said that they would enjoy seeing students in this way have more control over their education system, not necessarily what I had brought to Mr. Gilbertson way back in February, January area, which was that we would have a more equal thing. So the way that it was supposed to be in what I'm doing right now is, instead of having a student representative, which is not in our current code regarding the board code, it does not specify that we need or it doesn't specify that we have a student representative. That could only be found in the previous board policy, which I did search for it in both of them and could only find it in one. So instead of having it be void in our current one, I was suggesting to add some sort of way where the representative who would be in charge of that collective, which would be of all, at least the high school students, and would bring what the students have to say within that collective to this board and see what could be done in regard to certain things that our school does when it comes to how our school rules in the handbook, for example, are displayed. Trying to see. Our school's problem with racism has mostly been dealt with, thankfully, but I still see it as well. I think there's not as much since the previous board meeting, which is good. But with things like a student collective, if people know that a person is going out and being racist, clearly, it would be, I would think, the response of the students to say something to the school. And it doesn't seem like that's happening. And I've tried to voice that concern, and nothing happens to the students who, are actually making those racist comments that are found. Last month, I want to say on the 23rd, it was just before we had our break for Thanksgiving. I had a meeting with Ms. Ferrier and Mr. Woods regarding a few things before I was suspended for having displayed a Confederate flag. I thought it seemed really questionable because I could never find anything in the handbook about anything being wrong with displaying a Confederate flag. And I know that obviously you guys can't cover every specific in there. But there's nothing that I could see that is intrinsically disordered with the Confederate flag and its display. And in that meeting that I had with Ms. Ferrier and Mr. Woods, all they could tell me was that some courts have found that the Confederate flag is racist, and therefore that was a good enough reason for me to be suspended because of it, which I don't think is necessarily fair. Because of the fact that it's the right to express what you believe. And I don't think, and I think a lot of the people in the high school would also agree, that the Confederate flag is not racist. Some people may disagree with that assessment, that's fine, but I don't think that a student should have been suspended for having displayed it, especially since at the same time that I was suspended for that, swastikas were in the hallway, and there were gay pride flags in classrooms, and nothing happened to any of the students who displayed those, which is very questionable because when it comes to displaying of sexuality, that should not be a topic inside of our schools at all. And I think that if we're going to go after the Confederate flag because it's racist, then I don't think it's unfair to say that the gay pride flag shouldn't be displayed because sex is not a thing that minors should be talking about, especially in school, or be displayed in school. And the swastikas, I get that it's part of the curriculum. What was going on at the time of them being displayed was part of the curriculum. But if a Jewish Semite were to walk into that hallway and to see those swastikas, they would be mortified by the fact that those are displayed. And yet they were up for almost a month before they were taken down. They were up for weeks, and nobody did anything to take them down. Yet within 2 minutes of me putting up a Confederate flag, it was erased. I mean, at the request of the teacher, because it, quote, offended some individuals. Yet the swastika would, I would argue, offend more people than a Confederate flag. And the Confederate flag is part of our history. We shouldn't be, sheltering that away or hiding that in any way. I don't think it should necessarily be up with the United States flag, but it shouldn't be just told to get it out of here because of the fact that some people find it offensive, because some people here in our district also find the United States flag offensive. That doesn't mean we're going to stop displaying it, or at least I hope not, because that would be ridiculous. I also think, in regards to what I've said regarding that, there was a time where I wore a shirt that did not necessarily suggest anything other than an acronym. There was an acronym on it which said FJB, and the latter part of the shirt said, "Let's go Brandon," and was perfectly fine for the first 2 days that it was on me, and then on the third time it was on me, they told me I needed to take it off because they hadn't done anything yet. That shirt, I know the upper part of it with the FJB, you all know what that means. I'm very sure everyone here knows what that means. I get is not appropriate, but it's an acronym. It doesn't spell it out, and it could literally mean anything. And yet, obviously, because of the latter interpretation, or not interpretation, but the latter phrase, it was time to go after Aiden. Today, I wore a shirt to school that said there are only 2 genders. Nothing happened there. Because there wasn't anything wrong with that shirt. There isn't anything wrong with that shirt. And I think that that shirt was also okay to display. But I'm sure if I wear it again, now that, especially because I've said that that was the shirt that I wear, there's going to be a target placed back on me because of something that I believe. But again, I went to school, and we're supposed to be religion-free, and I wear my crucifix, and I have my tattoos on my wrists, and I have my medals of Mary, and I have everything that I would like to display, and that's fine, because it's religious and we can protect it, but we can't do the same when it comes to politics, even if there's nothing wrong with what's on the shirt, like with the shirt that I wore to school today regarding the 2 genders, because it has to do with politics. But the gender thing is not anything to, it doesn't have anything to do with politics, it has everything to do with science. And I think we need to reevaluate as our whole school, not just in the high school. We should reevaluate what we do and don't go after, especially with the shirt that I wore, which didn't say anything disorderly on it, and the shirt that I wore today, which doesn't have anything necessarily wrong on it. We went after the one shirt. The shirt I wore today got nothing, and the swastikas in the hallway were yet to be displayed for weeks. The Confederate flag was torn down in 2 minutes, and the gay pride flag is still up today when I went in. That seems very wrong. There's no reason why the gay pride flag should be displayed, especially if a Confederate flag cannot. Because if the Confederate flag is as racist as I've been told, then we shouldn't be displaying things like things promoting homosexuality in school, because sex is not a school topic. It shouldn't be. And the fact that it is very, very questionable and horrific. We shouldn't be having all of these big support groups for LGBTQ groups, because that's not something the school should be involved in. Yet, every single turn I take in the Croswell-Lexington High School hallway, there is some sort of sticker on a door or in a window of LGBT space, safe space. What about the people who have those conservative values that I've displayed, and yet I get targeted for it, like what I did with the Confederate flag, like what I did for my shirt, and what I probably would have gotten if I would have been seen, I probably figure, because I don't think anybody noticed that I wore that shirt today. They definitely would have gone after that too, which would not have been fair, because there were shirts with satanic symbols on it for weeks. I still see it. Yet nothing happens to them because it's protected by religion. But when we go to politics, which is also, again, just a belief, we can't have the same, trying to think of the word, we can't put it on the same level, because we're not going after the people who display their democratic values. I saw a shirt that had, before the election happened last year, there were shirts with Donald Trump and saying "F that loser" with the full words, not just acronyms, full words. Nothing happened to them. They worked for days on end, no teacher did a thing. And I've seen a few shirts this year that also have swear words, also have inappropriate things. I've seen people who wear shirts that are displaying forms of anime that are pornographic, that are still being spread around. And I also see what's going on. We have, in my 6th hour, we're being investigated for a group chat that we have outside of school. Because apparently there's a nexus there. There's a connection between school and the conversation that the students in that class are having outside of school. But nobody made a threat against anybody. Nobody said anything inappropriate, except for apparently one racist comment was made, and that was good enough for them. There's no reason why school rules, that's the key word, school rules, should apply to me when I'm outside of these buildings, and why not just me, but many other people in that class are being investigated for something that was said outside of school on our own time with our own specific group of people that we chose to talk to. There's no reason why anybody should be under investigation for comments they make outside of school unless it directly impacts the school. If someone in that town was to say that they were going to shoot someone in the school, then yeah, that would be one thing. But to make a racist comment outside of school, I know that it goes against the non-discrimination policy, but even then, it doesn't make sense why something that is protected under the First Amendment of the Constitution protected. We have the right to free speech. Yet, as long as there's a connection between students at the school, that's good enough for them to get involved and charge after something. And I don't think that's fair. Especially not to me, especially to the 3 people who have been suspended for comments made in that group chat, but only one person took part in that. I don't think it's fair. And I don't think it's fair also that I was suspended for that Confederate flag, in case I didn't iterate that enough. Because, again, that's my right. It was on school property, I know, but the Confederate flag is not a racist symbol, it's a symbol of our history. The good, the bad, and the ugly is still our history, and just take it for what it is. And I think it's insane that I was suspended for 2 days because of that and that shirt. Back to what the original thing was, is I think that if the students involved, and not just in that one chat, not involved in that one group, but that classroom, but the entire high school should be able to work with the school on how our school is run. I mean, it's not really a school if there's no students. If it's just a bunch of teachers, there's nothing to do. And I'm sure Mr. Wood, and I'm sure Mrs. Bones, and I'm sure Mr. Gilbertson agree, because they've said so. Student voice matters. And it does. But if we speak up, and we say we need to do something, and we should have a student collective like this to replace our system that currently has a singular person in charge of it, I think that'd be reasonable. I think that'd be more fair. I think it would give students the opportunity to speak up, and they'd have the right to say that they think something's up without having to show up to a board meeting to say there needs to be a change. because the change should start within the school and not outside the school, but that's not what's happening. This is the first time I've heard of anybody, to my knowledge, I've gone back a few meetings and tried to find stuff, that I could find on the internet at least, of anybody talking about some sort of student body that would actually have any effect on how our school is run. I know, again, like I said, 216 pupils were surveyed verbally, and out of that, 187 were in favor of an implementation of a student organization as opposed to a singular student representative. I know that's not every single person in the high school, but just out of 200 people that I've asked just walking through the hallway, and they said to a random person, yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I mean, not to throw shade over on Kayla, but I mean, one person doing everything is kind of rough. And not just one person doing everything, but, you know, I talked to her today. There's people who have worse problems or are getting in more trouble than I am for doing less. That person who got suspended from that group chat or received disciplinary action for that group chat or didn't make a racist comment was suspended for 6 days. What's going on? That's not right. He didn't even make a comment on the racist comment. He didn't even take a look at that. He wasn't even in the chat room, and he got suspended. There were 3 people. One of them got suspended, wasn't in the chat. The other 2 were in the chat. The one in the chat made a racist comment. Again, it's outside of school. So why is the school involved? And I think if the students have the power to make changes, not, you know, have so much authority that they can change everything they want to, but at least some authority where they could be like, okay, you guys are kind of overreaching, or, well, actually, that's not right, or, you know, morality kicks in and this is not something we should be doing as a school. I think it's time we did something, and I think it's time we skip over the let's do it as an extracurricular, as an outside activity looking in, and actually implement it as part of how our school functions, because that's what I've been talking about. All I've heard is the only way to do it is through a club. But that's not necessarily true, because, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be restricted to one person being the representative. It could be us having the entire high school, they all work together, and then it goes over to Michaela, and she brings it to you guys, and we figure stuff out from there. Anyway, that's all I got, but thanks for listening to my ramble, I guess.
Thank you.
I swore I wasn't going to speak, but I just want to let the district and the school board know that the school is trying very hard to make a change. They're trying very hard to do what's right, and I can tell you that I recently was approached by a student at the high school that sent me an email, and I did share with Mrs. Barrier. I guess my only comment is going to be it's going to come down to training the school receives within the students. Training is everything, and education is everything right now for kids. The only way you're going to teach somebody how something offends someone is through the education, and it has to be done right. So don't skip on the training, make it the best training you can get for the district. But I did get a message today from a parent that her son was suspended for a racial gesture at the high school, and he truly did not understand why it was a racist gesture. So the parents took him to go speak with an inclusion officer, and the young man's eyes were opened up and never came home and told his, my husband spoke with the wife on the phone tonight, and he told my daughter that he never knew what a lot of the representation meant and how hurtful it can be to people. So because he spoke with an inclusion officer, he was enlightened by it. So education, 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 get these kids trained, get somebody in here, a professional that knows what they're doing. And I know, Mr. Gilbertson, I have all the faith in the world, and you know I feel that way. I know you're gonna get somebody here for these kids soon to help. And I know the school board is gonna back him and make a good decision as well. But I just wanna speak on behalf of my family that we are seeing a huge change in the high school with our daughter. And education, education, education for these students that feel this way. That's the only way things will get better. Kids have to be exposed to, we're in a different time right now. We're in a different generation and things are really weird and ugly right now, and give these kids proper training in the middle school and the high school so they can be opened up to what's offensive, what's everyone. So it's all gonna come down to education, and I can promise you the district is trying to make it better for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Moved by Joe, support by Mike, to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on our agenda is the superintendent's report. Superintendent Gilbertson.
Thank you, President Gordon. First, congratulations to our students of the month. Many are still here. Great work to the students and to their families. It's always great representing them, hearing their stories and the impact they have in the classroom. I also want to begin and say especially a thank you to our emergency first responders. We actually have a few here tonight. Sheriff Rich is here and he'll speak later down on the agenda. But to all of our first responders, Mr. Whiskey, Mr. Butler, and to anyone else here who serves in those roles, in light of what we're dealing with in our communities, particularly following the November 30th tragedy in Oxford, it's very important to be reminded of how important these people are to our safety and the courage that they show. So I'm very personally thankful to you and to your services, and particularly to the partnerships that we have in place and the ones that I anticipate expanding. So thank you. Also, just a couple comments on what we've gone through, which in comparison is non-comparable to what tragedy occurred in Oxford. And I do want to exercise my own personal sadness for the loss of life and the tragedy that has happened there. Many of us have done already is give our thoughts and our prayers to those families and join so many people in support that they deserve. It's unthinkable what they're going through right now. But as we all know, with the wake of that certain tragedy, our state has been inundated with I would say, claims of threats that are just causing more trouble, that are, in thankfully all cases that I'm aware of, invalid, I should say. But whenever a threat comes, we look it over, we investigate it, we thoroughly report it, we act promptly. A letter was issued Friday. It was a really significant letter. I hope that the families read it, that it was sent to. It was a joint letter from all the Sanilac County law enforcement, the prosecutors, all superintendents joined in one voice on this letter, that we as parents, and that's me as well, have a responsibility to ensure that our children are acting in a responsible way. It starts in our home, it starts in my home. And likewise, we are a partner, and as was pointed out, and I appreciate that tonight, in making sure that we do our role as educators in a good way to work with you as parents to ensure that our children are understanding their words matter, understanding really to be respectful and to be kind to one another. Those types of things are important. But when we hear a threat, when a threat is made, we're going after the threat. We're going to find out where it came from, and we're going to deal with it. If there's somebody that causes threats to us that could jeopardize our safety, there's going to be swift consequences. And I can unequivocally say that we will be fair, we will be measured, but we will be strict too. So in that light, I want to emphasize the importance of students who have been really very valuable in helping express concerns that they have seen and sharing them with our administration, with parents and so forth, our OK to Say app, which is very effective as well with the Michigan State Police. So just want to reinforce the importance of all of us working together, supporting one another, parents talking to our children, and sitting down with them. I had that conversation with my own little 2 children not too long ago before they went back to school. And it was a tough conversation, to be honest, having with a 5th grader and an 8th grader. But it needed to happen because my children understand. They say things that could be viewed as a joke, could cost them a serious consequence. If they say something that could be viewed as a joke that is maybe just trying to be funny, but make somebody feel bad because for whatever reason, whether it's their culture or their background or whatever it might be, that's unacceptable. All of us have a responsibility, we as educators and all of our parents too, to work together on this. We're going to keep getting better. In fact, I know we will get better in terms of ensuring we're doing our part as a school district. But we need to work together as families as well. So with all that, it's more of a personal message during my SOOPS report, but I also want to add some more specifics on Friday. Excuse me. On Friday, we had a professional development here in the district. I don't know if Donna wants to speak to that a little bit, but I want to commend our staff for their dedication to continuously improve. Our staff, our teachers in particular, are in a new teacher observation model, the 5D+. It's a great model, but when you take into consideration all the challenges we're facing at once, it's kind of hard. So we get it, but we're working collaboratively with our teachers to improve. They are working to improve through all the challenges in which we're facing together. I commend them for that. I guess that's my point on this. And also I want to add that last week we did have additional training for our staff with attention on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Very good training. Very good training. And I think Ms. Berrier for her work, and we've got more to do. We're going to keep improving and growing and finding ways to be better. But that was, I think, very appropriate first step for us to take, or additional step to take. So in addition, on January 3rd, that's the first day after the break, the Christmas break, holiday break, we will have ALICE training. ALICE training has been here in this district prior to January 3rd. We had it in August of 2018. In fact, Chief Hall at the time conducted all district ALICE training, and prior to that, the district, prior to my arrival, also had ALICE training. But meeting with the administrators, meeting with the teachers representation, we agreed we want to go have more training and really start over with it, even though we've had training in the past. So January 3rd, whole day of professional development will be divided between 5D+ and also ALICE training. We met today in our safety committee with Deputy McKenney, who's going to help us organize the training for ALICE. And January 3rd, we're looking at February 18th as another day for us to have a follow-up, more hands-on ALICE training. And we're just going to continue to keep on the front burner the importance of us making every effort we possibly can to keep our students and staff safe. And ALICE is part of that. I'd also add that prior to the Oxford shooting, and in part because of the feedback that was given to us through the surveys we sent out for ESSER 3, many families indicated the desire to get a school resource officer back in the district. So I had asked Mr. Bishop again, prior to the November 30th date, to inquire with the Michigan State Police. And we'll talk about this a little bit further if we need to in the agenda, but Michigan State Police, the Sheriff's Department, and the local Croswell Police Department to get proposals for school resource officer to return. I know Sheriff Rich will be speaking in a little while, and again, thank you for being here tonight, sir. But that's a priority. It was a priority before what happened on November 30th, and I thank all agencies for their support and trying to bring forward back to our Cros-Lex schools school resource officer. So progress is being made, more work to do, and I know you have an update that I emailed you a little bit earlier this afternoon. So with all that, I think that's all I have for my speech.
Thank you. Mrs. Barrier for Curriculum and Instruction and HR Director report.
Okay. As Dan said, on Wednesday of last week, the students were released at half day and staff spent the afternoon in department meetings and planning, which was very well spent. On Friday last, our teachers spent half of their day with Colin Rittmaster and her cohorts, excuse me. But this time we did something a little bit different. Rather than working with the kids in one big whole group, we separated them into elementary and middle and high school groups so that they could be more specific in their conversations. Everybody participated fully. There was good discussion. There were good questioning and answers, going back and forth. And Colin he was so impressed by their thinking and by their efforts. So it was definitely time well spent. So we do think that giving them those opportunities to speak more directly with Colin is a plus and something that we'd like to do again. The other half of the day was spent on diversity, equity, and inclusion training through Safe Schools. And then there was a little bit of time left to still work on some bright space and curriculum adjustments. Just another little update. I recently submitted a grant for full reimbursement of our K-8 benchmark assessments, and we will be fully reimbursed for the cost of the EA testing. It's approximately $16,000, and that will be coming back to the district by about February. In human resources, we recently had interviewed for a fourth grade position at Meyer, and we at this time are bringing in Rachel Sober as a long-term substitute into the position, and then at that point in time, Rachel will be taking, she's graduated, she will be taking her MTTC test in general education by the end of January, and our plan is to bring her in as a teacher at that point. She is also doubly certified in special education, and she's already taken her test for special education and has passed that as well. We've also interviewed a special education teacher for the high school with 21 years of experience, including co-teaching in math and ELA. And we extended an offer which was accepted, and we will be processing and we'll be bringing that person forward at the next board meeting for approval. There is also a posting for a middle school math teacher, which is still up. That will close on January 3rd. And we will plan to do interviews right after that to try to get that position filled. So hopefully that would be a second person to bring to the board. We're hopeful at our next meeting. We're currently in the process of interviewing for additional daily floating substitute teachers. And when I say floating, it means that they are busy every single day. They're either substituting in a classroom or they're providing additional student support, student monitoring, being in key places, helping out with kids who are needing additional assistance with assignments and makeup work if it's in secondary, and in titled classrooms, and being a classroom additional support where they're needed if they're not substituting. And Right now, we have 5 in the district, but one will be leaving us in January. We said to get a part-time teaching job in another district. So our intent is to have a couple of those folks in each building because the need is always there, so that administrators have been filling in, and like Dan said, 5 plus is rolling, and there's just a lot to get done this year. That's all I have for you at this time.
Thank you. Next is the Chief Financial Officer report. Mr. Bishop?
Thank you. The district had recently sent out a survey asking the community and staff for feedback on how to utilize its ESSER 3 ARP funding. That survey was required to be used in conjunction with our budget application at the state level. The survey has since closed and received a respectable 363 responses and provided a clear picture as how the community wanted the district to spend the funding. 70.5% of all responses identified deliver interventions for struggling students and provide small group instruction as a priority. 53.7% identified implement key components of reading, language arts, and math, while 49.9% identified provide social emotional learning opportunities such as counseling, mental health, and wellness resources for students, staff, and families as being the top priority. Those are the top 3 responses from our survey. So we use that as a guide excuse me, while submitting the application. These responses played a critical role, not only that, but in the narrative part and budget allocations submitted to the state. Today, Ms. Barrier and I spent time finalizing the application to the state. At about 3 o'clock today, I received confirmation of receipt from the state's application, Next Plus, for the district's application. The deadline is the 15th of December, at which time Kevin Walters from MVE will have the daunting task of reviewing every one of the applications submitted to the state. So when we will receive the confirmation on the application is yet to be understood, but I wouldn't expect it anytime soon with the holiday break. And again, the 800 plus applications he's going to have to review by himself. So once I receive an update on our application, I will definitely let Mr. Gilbertson know.
Thank you. Mr. Shaw, anything you want to report? No? Anybody else? That's it? All right. Kayla, student representative report.
Good evening, board members and community. I have a few updates to present to you regarding some of the accomplishments of students this month. With Christmas break coming up, students are working hard in their classes to maintain their grades as the semester comes to a close in the next coming weeks. Students are also getting in the holiday spirit at the high school as Visions decorates the school for us, and they've also organized a holiday spirit week for students to participate in. It offers students the opportunity to showcase their holiday spirit by dressing up in holiday colors, wearing their favorite Christmas hats or socks, and wearing their very best Christmas pajamas and ugly Christmas sweaters. Tomorrow, students will even be able to dress up like Christmas trees, and I am particularly excited to see what students can come up with for this Spirit Day. Another exciting announcement that I have for you is in regards to the mural that I mentioned at our last board meeting. Our student artists have designed a mural that focuses on kindness, and they've actually begun to sketch the outline of it. Both the students and the staff at the high school are very excited to see the finished product. Our student athletes and sports teams have also had an exciting month as our winter sports programs start back up. Last week, our boys basketball team beat Harbor Beach and Marysville, and they actually have a game tonight at the high school. And our bowling teams also have a match tonight. Another highlight regarding our student athletes is Ethan McCombs signing with SE4 to run cross country and track. And I want to say a big congratulations to Ethan for all of his accomplishments. And that's all I have for you tonight.
Thank you, Michaela. business. Under new business is discussion of the school resource officer and law enforcement in our district. Sheriff Rich, would you like to present your information?
Thank you. Thank you for asking me here tonight. Thank you for entrusting our office to present a proposal to you. And I've had many conversations in the last week with the superintendent. Our staffing at this time is going to make it impossible to fulfill that. I've been working with the chief here almost daily to see what we can do. Your needs are greater in your district than any other district because of your size. You're spread out with different buildings. You have a more diverse population. I really believe you need this program back. That being said, you need the right person in this program. You need somebody that's going to mentor your kids and that the kids are going to trust so they can come to them and confide, and they have the disposition that they're not going to create big problems. And I trust you'll find that. You've got experience in this board to look for that or bring back something that you had that will work. I am down 3 people. I wish we could do this with our office. It isn't just as easy as hiring somebody off the street to put them in a position for law enforcement. There's a lot of training that goes into it, and there's a lot of confidence that we have to build with that person to put in charge, especially with the kids. There's a lot of potential problems there that could be worse than what we have if the wrong person is put in a position of authority with the children. We really have to make sure they're vetted, and I trust you'll do that. Anything we can do to help, we will do that. Last week we had a meeting with the superintendents, and it was probably one of the best meetings. We sat down with the superintendents and the prosecutor and our director of Homeland Security, who covers a lot of the information we're working with. The conversation was very open. We had a very good exchange and come out of there feeling like we were one and we were united in the message we wanted to deliver. It was at that meeting, the superintendents, myself, the prosecutor, so we need to get ahead of these problems. We need to go on the offensive. We need to show our solidarity. The letter was drafted by our prosecutor, endorsed by all the superintendents, and sent out Friday. We want it out immediately. Unless there's something I'm not aware of today, there was no complaints come in, and I don't think there was any after that letter went on Friday. Maybe it's got an effect. The social media is our biggest enemy when it comes to this. And we know that. These complaints start at one school, and they just repeat themselves, go from school to school. And it has taken all of our resources to keep ahead of them. And I know Mr. Gilbertson and I was standing in the lunchroom when one come in together, and it was just a repeat of something else. And we got to put the thumb on them and put them to rest. Training. COVID shut us down for a year, well, 18 months. Everything was put on pause, and we know that. You have so much new staff. We have so much new staff. I walk in the courthouse and I don't know a lot of the people. We're lacking on training. That's always the first thing that gets cut anywhere is training. I think we're on track to get it back up and going here in about 3 weeks. We should be back. Another thing that we're prepared to go forward with, and I know it's been discussed in the past, our team program, which takes the place of the DARE program. Our officers ready to come into the school and start with the team program. You're president of the school board. You are familiar with team in the PEC district, correct? Do you think it's effective? That's maybe
Yes.
okay. I know at this point it would also provide a uniform office in the school as a presence and a deterrent, and somebody the students can confide in. I mean, that's set to go. You just tell us when, and we can have the officers here teaching it and integrating with your curriculum and your schedule you have here. Questions?
Sheriff Richards, have you looked at, or has the city looked at hiring a part-time officer? Because I understand the struggles of trying to find law enforcement officers right now.
We've had this conversation. What I run into is I have to deal with the collective bargaining agreement, which means if an officer, well, before I can even take applications, the job has to have a job description, and then the job has to be posted, and then it has to go to the Board of Commissioners to be approved. We're talking several months before we can get through those steps. And I understand I'd love to do it, Russ, but the need is now. If you have an avenue to expedite this, do it, because I cannot do it in the time and fashion that you need it.
Is there any schools in Michigan that's doing private security that you know of instead of contracting with law enforcement? Because of the struggles that's occurring across the state.
I actually got a call, and I'm waiting for a call back from Premier Security. There's a huge one that's more out of Genesee County. I don't know if you're familiar with them or not. Waited to hear back because I wanted to ask that question to them. I know they do private contracting for security issues and recommendations, similar to what we do for the active shooter, but I don't know if they put in private security in the schools, and if they do, I don't know what kind of authority they have, if it will be the same as maybe a security officer at a store, because they wouldn't, I don't know if they're licensed, number one, and if they are licensed, they would have to be activated under a police agency, and that's a private organization. So I don't know what their status is. Does that answer?
Yeah, it does. I know like private security, I mean, like if they're retired law enforcement, like a lot of warrant cops,
yes,
they start their own company down there that do private security, and that gives them the right to carry a weapon.
Yes.
But outside your jurisdictional area, they're just a security guard where they can ordain somebody like a loss prevention officer, but they cannot. Then they call the local law enforcement in to assist.
Right. In order to be licensed under the state of Michigan, they have to be licensed under a recognized law enforcement agency, and they're not at that point. So, maybe things will change with the advent of Oxford. It probably would be a good thing if it did, but the meals are going to take a while to go.
Is there anything feasible to do a monthly thing until?
You're begging me for this month.
Well, I know you're struggling. I know the city of Croswell struggling. Like I said, I'm struggling. I don't think the general public understands it, but it's struggling throughout Michigan.
Another thing that's thrown a wrench into it is COVID with employees and COVID in the jail. You know, I have employees off and we're backfilling with different shifts, trying to cover, and you know what I'm saying? You know, I've got my lieutenants working 16-hour shifts to cover for deputies. You know, I'm running into the same issues that you are. I don't have enough employees. I'm down on employees, and then we're out for 10 to 14 days because of the COVID. It's really put a burden on us. You know, and then on our patrol side, this last week I got all of the officers out chasing these stupid complaints in regular patrol was being neglected. I don't need them tied up if there's an accident or something coming in, somebody needs to find out.
Yeah, I just know there's like a local police department or academy where there's only 3 officers. The rest are DNR officers because nobody's going to the local office.
Exactly.
The draw's not there.
Exactly. And Friday I go to Delta to that academy that graduates, and the majority of people graduating are already hired when they come out of that academy. So I mean, they're being picked during the academy and prior to the academy. They have a job and they get out. And I think you run into the same issues with your teachers. I hear you talking about stuff. It's the same problems with McDonald's. It don't matter where. You can't find employees. And where do these people go? Nobody can answer that question. And I thank you for trusting us to do that. We're trying to put a better presence in the school based on these last threats. But I would suggest if you can jump on with our team program, that will help. So if you have any other questions, I'll try to answer them.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we do have a bunch more stuff planned with the superintendents at the next meeting. So we're not done with this. We've got some other things going to keep moving us in the right direction, keep our communication going. So thank you.
Thank you.
We, as you know, I this afternoon received a response from the city of Croswell in regards to the potential of us to have on a temporary basis, beginning January 3rd, a school resource officer back at Cros-Lex schools. I think I shared with you, the types of responsibilities that we would have, which were similar than before, but also the information that was given to us by the city manager, the interim city manager. So I know, Mr. Bishop, I asked you for the cost estimate so that we're aware of what that would be. Would you mind speaking to that briefly?
That's it. So, looking at our last contract with the city of Croswell, I was able to kind of take what we used to have. It was a 70-30 split, meaning we would pay 70% and the city would pay the remaining 30%. And using Officer Wormlinger as our most recent example, the annual cost was about $72,500 for the district. So if they had a similar person in that position that they would be able to do on a half-a-year basis, I just simply said it would be about half the cost. So half of 75 is late, what it is. Whatever happens, it's not bad. But using that as an estimate for the half a year. And there are a lot of factors that take place in that. If the officer has, mainly it's the health insurance. So if the officer does not take health insurance through their department, then that savings is passed on to the district. But I guess from a financially worse case scenario, that's about the price that we're looking at.
Could you reach out to them, Keith? That's in their proposal. They didn't include no fee. So can you reach out to Croswell and get like, what is the cost per month?
A month.
What they're throwing at us, because we covered the 730 before, and we're paying overtime additionally on top of that for James. Like, can they put something with figures onto it on their end?
I can certainly reach out to them and see if they would be willing to do something like that, because I haven't received any hard numbers, right?
Right.
Besides what was received today.
Exactly, correct.
I have a quick question for you, Keith. So when you say a 70-30 split, so they have, this officer sign a contract, so they have a contract with the city. So you're saying we cover 70% of that contract and the city pays 30% of that contract?
Correct.
Well, my question is, that's a contract that we didn't negotiate. And there may be extra fringe benefits in there. Maybe they get so much for clothing, they get so much for dry cleaning. Is there a way for us to strip it down and really look at, well, what are we paying for services? Maybe not all your added benefits that you get included in your contract.
Well, the contract, I'm assuming is what they're getting paid is, I'm assuming, following the same CBA type issues that sheriffs do. So no, we didn't enter into an agreement negotiation with the city. We basically asked for a proposal and they submitted to us that proposal. I think that it would be an opportunity to negotiate that and strip out. Yes, they did have an itemized list of what was covered, including your uniform expenses and those sort of things too. And they just simply multiplied it by that ratio, and we had to pay that. So it was kind of a take it or leave it deal as far as I understood. And that's why there was a difference, because it was questioned, why is this so much more when we moved to a different officer?
Right.
And it was found out at that point that it was because of the health. One took cash in lieu and one took the health. So is it something that we could negotiate? In theory, I would say absolutely. There's no doubt about it. Do we have the ability to, or to
I know our
call the
options
shots
are
to this
limited.
timing
Right.
thing? That would be a lot more difficult. But for a long-term solution, yeah, I think that's something that it was never really entertained at the city level since I've kind of been a part of that. We just kind of said, this is what our cost is for this deputy, not deputy, but officer. You are now taking that officer away from us, so you're going to now take 70% of that because of the time that they spend in school.
Or prorated version. Because they get uniform allowance, uniform
That's what I'm
training.
saying.
Like, if we're paying that whole thing for the year, that should be prorated, but we're only paying 70% of that.
That's what they're saying, yeah.
Yeah, but I think in our last contract, if I read it, when it broke down, we were paying that full amount for that officer for the year. We were paying 70% of his wages.
Correct, 70% of the whole package.
Yes, but they, when they broke down the package, if you look at the contract, we were paying that back end of it at 100%. So that we're saving money in the back end. So I think we just need to look at it and break it down with their officers' contracts. We're not paying for the full 100%.
Gotcha.
Where it should be prorated to what we pay.
Yeah, I can take a look at that, just to confirm that.
And then I also have a question, looking for a, resource officer for, if we say that it's for the district, is it district or is it a high school? That's what, I think there needs to be a set schedule if we're gonna say we have a district that, because we do have multiple buildings 5 miles apart, they can't spend 90% of their time in the high school. There needs to be some sort of a schedule, and I'm not saying 1 o'clock on Tuesdays you're here, but at least once a week, you're in every building. You are visibly seen, you're having conversation with those administrators. You can't spend all your time here and then once every couple of weeks pop into another building. If you're gonna call it a district SRO.
I agree with that.
Otherwise call it a high school SRO. Right, that needs to be spelled out in the
We
job
did talk
description.
about that earlier, Dennis and I and Dan, that, there kind of needs to be laid out what the expectations are. And obviously, the expectation of building to building would be in there as well. So.
One of the, outcomes of this temporary placement, because that's what they're calling it.
Yeah.
They're not calling it a permanent placement, so there could be some benefits too, because we want obviously the best service relationship with students, proactiveness, mentoring, and of course a security presence that is a viable deterrent for folks who have bad intentions. However, it is hard because most of the activity where attention is needed is at the high school level. I mean, I think our kids are great, our students are great overall, but that's where they drive. They are, I think it's more common. Anywhere I've been in my career, I'll just say it. As a former middle school principal, I did have 1 day a week an officer in my building on Tuesdays, once a week. So to your point, I think there's some validity there, and I think it's true. But I think part of our struggle is Lexington is not within the jurisdiction of Croswell Police Department. So, he in the past, to be honest, know how many times he went down there. I know he went to Cros-Lex some in the past. I know he was here more than he used to be initially when we did have these kinds of conversations. But yeah, I agree. It would be good to have that person move to different schools. But I will say the secondary level, particularly the high schools, where most of the time needs to be spent. And I would be very concerned if we're pulling an officer away from the high school too much. So I don't know what that balance is, to be honest. Like I said, as a middle school principal, I had 1 day a week I could count on my SRO in my building. So I don't know if that's a good solution. The elementary kiddos, I don't want to speak for Ms. Moody, she's here tonight, but I still think it's good for the elementary students and staff to see our SRO. I definitely agree with that. I just don't know what that blend is. Maybe it's, so I agree in concept.
There should be a blend and it should be spelled out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying.
Well, what's the spelled out part? That's the part I'm not sure.
Right. I think the spelled out is that it needs to be in all the buildings for at least some time,
That's the problem. If we don't get specific, then it's hard
Well,
to.
we need to get specific, is my point. I don't want to enter into something not specific and we'll work it out.
Okay.
I think that needs to be spelled out before day one.
So.
And it's up for changing. That doesn't have to be,
Sure.
That's how it's going to be forever if we find that that's not really working. But, a half day at each elementary school, I don't know what that magic mix is, but I think there needs to be something spelled out.
And I think that's the question. Who is the most knowledgeable to answer that question? On what should be the most appropriate amount of time that SRO should spend in each and every building? I personally don't feel at this moment I have that direct answer. I have a general answer, but I don't have that direct answer. So, I think personally, this is an open discussion topic. My input is to add, one person's not enough. Let me be direct. One's not enough. I think we all probably would agree with that. Ideally, we'd have 3, maybe 4, possibly. But as you heard Sheriff Rich say, he's down officers right now, and it's a challenge. But maybe there are other options for security that we could get in addition to an SRO that could offset this challenge of how much time does an SRO spend in each building. Personally, I believe that's worthwhile for us to pursue. I do. And even that won't provide a guarantee of 100% foolproof safety, but it does provide another layer of support. There was very good comments and suggestions given from a community member that we had spoke with last week, that maybe there's some vetted volunteers that we could have within our community that come into our buildings. They go through their background checks. They're willing and able to, they meet our mark of trusted parents that could provide another layer of monitoring of our campuses. So in conjunction with the school resource officer, these are additional steps I believe we should be pursuing, at least looking at. The security company, whether Premier Security Company is a viable option or not. I do know of another district that has in our conference actually, that has from what I understand, a former officer who is, I don't know if he's an armed officer or an armed security person or not, that I don't have the answer to, I don't know. But is working in that capacity in one of our BWAC partner schools and has been doing so for a number of years in place of a school resource officer. So those are things that I personally think we need to pursue further towards an outcome that will provide another layer of support. Our safety committee met today. Mr. Butler, part of that too, and appreciate you coming to it today. And we had some great conversations about ALICE training, about using the RAVE app, which all superintendents and the sheriff himself had said. Other types of things we discussed as well for safety that were really valuable, I believe. But adding more people to secure our campuses is something we need to pursue. So is there an officer that's retired recently that could be also hired independently that might have some authorities that could be beneficial to us? I think we need to pursue that too. Those are my thoughts.
I got a question for you, Sheriff Rich. If, like Croswell, they brought it up with our district being unique with a school in Lexington outside of their jurisdiction. No matter who the officer is, who we decide to or agree to, if we do go that route, would you deputize that officer? And then who are you giving them authority and arrest powers underneath your office to make arrests in the village of Lexington? Or is that going to be a conflict with the Lexington Police Department as well?
No, I've actually had conversation with Chief Buckmaster, just throwing ideas out there about him forming a partnership with Chief Sheldon. I don't know if they've had a conversation about it, to maybe if they could hire an officer between the two of them, in contract here.
So they'd be a sworn officer in Lexington?
Yeah, and I spoke with Chief Buckmaster too. I wouldn't be opposed to deputizing them. And I guess let me back up for those on the board. To deputize them means they run under my authority in the county. I only have 2 deputized officers in the county that are not sheriff's office employees right now. Both of them are retired and active law enforcement in the county. So, I still have very high confidence in them. What we've done is we've entered into mutual aid agreements with every agency in the county. And then it protects both entities from liability. And the way some departments have people in and out as a revolving door, I don't have to worry about that officer getting in trouble and then trying to revoke their deputy status through the court. It's completely on the entity that they work for. So with the mutual aid contract, if they need to go outside the village or city that they're working in, they just ask, they're granted permission. Or if we need them, we can asked for their assistance and they provided. Now, what I explored with Chief Buckmaster is possibly deputizing the individual and have it run parallel under the deputy status that they're sworn in to be kind of inclusive or run along the guidelines of mutual aid during the course or while in the course of investigating a complaint within the Croswell-Lexington School District. And I wouldn't be opposed to doing that, Russ. You know, we got to throw all the ideas out there. There's nothing off the table right now, and that's.
No, I mean, that's why we're talking about all these.
Exactly, yeah. So I think
that's to try to make something work great for
right, and I think that's an option, and I think that's the direction I would take if you guys can pick somebody or find somebody that you feel has need. You know, if it's somebody I have confidence in, and I do, Eric. I've known Eric, and I've seen his work, so and I have confidence in him. Does that answer?
Croswell-Lexington already have a mutual aid agreement, don't they?
They have a mutual aid agreement, but the mutual aid agreement is for Croswell and Lexington that don't extend outside the village and the city limits.
So that eliminates the high school.
Unless we can work something out that I can deputize them during the course of investigation or during the course of their position as a school resource officer.
So even as a, right, so even as a mutual aid agreement between Croswell and Sanilac County Sheriff's Department without having to go there, that's not, is that kind of the same thing?
It would.
I mean, if you limited it to the school district or school ground, is a mutual aid agreement?
I think it needs to be a little broader. I think it needs to be during the course of their work or their investigation on a case here. And then they don't have to call dispatch each time to get permission. It's already given because you don't know time of day. And if they're in the middle of something, the last thing on their mind is getting permission to go interview this kid over, you know, Uleville or somewhere in that. I think that stuff needs to be done ahead of time, and then bridges need to be done before we enter into any kind of agreement.
The two deputies you said you have sworn, they're retired from the sheriff department when you deputize them?
Yeah, they're both active.
And they're both active still?
Pardon me?
And they're both active?
They're both active.
So if the district hired their own retiree, would you deputize that person?
That throws a curve to it because we have to run everybody through our FTO program, our field training program. Yep. And once that's done, there's, because of my collective bargaining agreement, then the job has to be posted. I can't just hire them for this position.
If it was retired from your office? I'm not saying, I'm just saying, if we hire somebody from your office that's retired, would you deputize that person if we paid separately?
I can't do that. They wouldn't have the police authority because they're not working for a police agency.
Okay.
The school grounds itself cannot give them the police authority they need. They have to be employed by a police organization.
Yep, you're right. They got to be put
in order to get their
contract.
state license, yes.
Thank you.
Did I muddy the water for you?
No, I got it. You explained it, I got it.
So just to be clear, we'll do some some discussion with the police department on some questions that were asked regarding cost and breakdown and so forth. But I also would like to make every effort possible to have a school resource officer back on January 3rd. So we'll do our best, but that's just my.
Or the fourth. Third's PDA.
Yeah, the third would be great. They can help
True.
us with our active shooter / Alice training too.
That's true.
So that would be a great outcome. I'll work that way. But
I'm going to check in with the private security you talked to. I'll do some digging too as well.
this isn't a, let's change it. This is a discussion point anyway, but I just want to get some direction of where to go. Mixture of locations, times, spreading out two different locations and such as we discussed. Some cost questions came up that we'll refer on and right away tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't think you want to do a knee-jerk reaction. And yeah, even back to January 3rd would be great. And maybe you start out with just a monthly, month thing so you can really solidify what you're looking for. You know, but just saying, okay, so we're going to do for 6 months. Maybe so gotta do some checking.
That's all called off anyways, temporary.
Temporary, yeah, this is temporary, as we discussed. And that in a way is positive as well, in a way, but covers two priorities. A, get somebody here as quick as we can to provide support on how to word it. And then second, it's temporary to work out those details of what we're expecting, and we can evolve a little bit too. So we'll outline the parameters as discussed, and bring you back some information. I'll communicate the week an update to you and see what we come up with, and we can go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is to discuss the Board of Ed Code of Ethics. We've all received that in our board pack. It's also been parts of our board notes. So any discussion? We're not voting tonight, just input, discussion, questions, anything? Okay. Next one is to discuss the rules of public participation at a board meeting.
I have a question on the duration of speakers. And I think other districts do this, and I've read about just having a uniform time limit for speakers. And now, what would that be? Is it 3 minutes or 5 minutes? What's the number?
I've seen it a lot of times 3 minutes. Daphne, do you?
That's the minimum number.
That's the minimum
that's
number.
suggested.
Okay. I guess my feeling as the person that I guess would be facilitating that, what do you do? What do you do? Have their clock sitting here so they can see the time running out? I guess the logistics of it to me is weird.
Well, I mean, I think it's announced as you say. If anybody wants to speak, and address the board.
Yep.
And you remind them of the time limit, and then you look for that right moment to interject. I'm not saying you got to stop them at 3 minutes, but if it's 3:15 or 3:20, whatever. But some people may go for 10 minutes and not be aware that they made the point.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been to other council meetings and board meetings where that's pretty standard practice. There is a time limit, and that's exactly what they do. They just kind of interject. Excuse me, your time is up. Can you conclude, and then give them the option to conclude. And if they don't conclude quickly, then they're kind of told nicely that your time is up.
May have to use the gavel.
Yes.
I think it's something we need.
Agreed. What was your feeling on registering your intention to participate in the public portion of the board meeting upon arrival at the board meeting? I mean, at this point, it's just kind of an open, nobody registers, nobody says ahead of time, nobody, is that something that we would want to require? Is that your thought? That was just something that I guess I wanted input from others, how they felt about that. Whose job is that? Does it go to Daphne? Does it come straight here? Do they, what are the logistics of that look like?
So I've been other places where they have it. So there's, when they come in and they pick up their agenda, there's almost like a notepad, and they sign up their name, and then the main topic, they don't have to go into great detail. They, I want to discuss expulsion, I want to discuss student group, or whatever it is.
Right.
And then you as the president, when it's time for audience comment, nobody has signed up for audience comment, or we have a couple people. First up is Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith was up there.
Sure.
You would say at that time, remember you have 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, however long to express your thoughts. And then you thank them, and then the next person, the next name on the list is.
It's a good way to keep it organized too, because now they're not looking at each other. Who's going, right? Yeah, it's a good way to kind of
What do you do if someone spontaneously wants to, because it happens all the time, where one person speaks and then another person didn't plan on speaking, and now they want to speak? Then would you just say at the end of the list, is there anyone else that wishes to address the board that didn't sign up?
Well, I guess, and that's why we're having this
the purpose of that.
discussion, because.
Well, I think, no, but you made a point that it kind of stops everybody from looking like who's going next, so you kind of keep it expedited, like boom, 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 it's organized, it's efficient. But then at the end, I guess I wouldn't want to limit the opportunity for someone to speak if they felt so inclined, because they're motivated or somebody said something, they're like, I got to say my piece now. I don't want to take that off the table.
Right. And that's exactly why we're having this discussion.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for almost 12 years, and it's always been the same. So I'm happy to get input, come up with a different strategy, but again, kind of have it laid out before we, start.
And this will not be a policy.
Correct.
Ms. Loomis and I went back and forth on whether it would be, but it is not according to our attorneys on this. So it's a guideline, it's a practice, it can always be evolved. You can try, with Mr. Beckelli saying it's fair. It's your decision, obviously, as a board, but it is fair. Sometimes, maybe someone's nervous or whatever reason, yes, it defeats the purpose, but it's also important to the public opinion.
I don't think it defeats the purpose. I think they're married together. The list helps the audience to know who's next. Nobody's looking around, and it keeps things moving.
Right.
And then when you get to the end of the list, is there anyone else who didn't sign up, who arrived late or whatever, that wants to speak?
Or just didn't know that they needed to sign up.
Yeah.
Right.
It's at least the first few times, somebody may come and go, I didn't know to put my name on that.
Right.
To speak. So
Especially if you make this change, so
Right.
new.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
We can do that.
We'll try it all out,
Yeah.
Just, it'll work itself out. We'll see what works best.
So do you like how often, I know we had a gentleman speak today that went over 3 minutes, but how often does that happen? And I'm trying to think back, I don't think it happens that often, that somebody gets on themselves.
It doesn't.
So, I think it'd be pretty rare. I think if somebody's really passionate and they're kind of organized and they don't just, kind of just finish what they want to say. Is that kind of,
Well,
Still give the opportunity to finish, just that was a guide, you could say 7 minutes, 8 minutes.
Right.
Whatever.
We could say 3 to 5, we could,
do you have to have it? You don't have to, we don't have one right now. I'm just thinking, I don't know how often that really comes into play.
But that means to that point, it may not come into play often, but at least you have that guideline. So when you need to use it, it's there. And then the audience is aware that.
You gotta be consistent with it though.
Yeah, but that's, you say, what's that?
I just don't know the consistency of it.
Yeah, you gotta be consistent, whatever it is.
When you're reading.
No, you're saying that somebody doesn't necessarily go 3 minutes
You say
ever.
what you're gonna say.
No, I'm not saying ever, I'm saying, and even 3 minutes, maybe, I'm gonna say 1 minute for
I guess where I'm going with the limitation is that as a board, we can gauge when the repetition starts. It's gonna kind of derail like the rest of the other speakers. The person has made their point, now they're making it again and again and again. And at some point we have to manage this meeting and say, thank you for your time, and your points are well taken. And this person could go from 3 minutes to 5 minutes very quick, making the same points. But if President Gordon sees new points being introduced that we should be hearing, then, I guess you use your judgment here and say, we got to hear, these are all new points. This person has a lot of points.
I'll just make this a note.
I guess I got to go back to so there's a lot of points, but when people sign up and what do you want to talk about? And they'll put one thing.
Right.
Not 5 things. And that's the other thing is we can't really guide the audience on, if they keep it focused, and that's the hard part, you keep it focused, we can all like dive in on the subject matter, but when there's 10 points, it kind of it dilutes all the points because you're going everywhere with it, and you know, I guess that's more of just a standard practice that I wish, you know, it's more of a how to impact the audience with the speech kind of thing, but.
But what you have to remember is these are just people in the community getting up. They don't normally get in front of people and do a presentation to, it's not part of their job to speak to people, you know? So maybe they're not so concise in their class. It just, you know, just comes.
Yeah, they may have a lot on their mind and they've been holding it in and
exactly.
on tonight and I'm
So,
giving you my 10 points.
Yeah, that's why you don't really need to put, they shouldn't really have to put what they want to discuss, their point. Just let them put their name on the list, we don't need a reason.
And then they can go.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them won't be really concise. It's actually those people that just heard something, spark something.
Could you say, please limit your comments to 5 minutes?
You can say whatever you want to say.
And that's a request. And their flow, to your point, is continuing. They have additional information they really feel that they need to share, which makes sense, and that's their opportunity to do so. And you, as the president, are able to, field that feedback, and maybe it does go a little beyond that. I mean, that seems reasonable.
Like I said, I don't really think it happens that much.
Right.
No, I'm sure once in a while.
Right. True.
I think
It's
the
worked
majority.
well, actually, what we've done.
No.
This was a topic that the board had to discuss to decide what you want to do, keep it as it is, or make that adjustment or not.
Yeah, I'd be in favor of still having an adjustment, having some kind of time limit on there, and it's something you have to be somewhat consistent with, no matter what. Because you let somebody else kind of go way beyond because they're kind of on a roll, and then the next person gets up and you say, your time limits, you kind of have your time limit, right? Now that's a problem. You got to be consistent.
That's a good point, because if one person
Maybe really concise
and the other person's repeating, but they're like, well, I still want my 5 minutes.
Yeah, take your 5 minutes, but you got to be consistent.
I'm just scanning through some of the rest of these. And it's in the board pack too, if you're just looking for it. Maybe we'll tweak these a little bit just after the discussion we've had. And obviously we can have more discussion if we need to, or both if we're in agreement the next time.
Let us know, Daphne and I will make whatever adjustments the board requests and make those adjustments ready for possibly the January meeting.
I think if you are going to go with, they're going to sign up, then I think we have to have some sort of something a little more, maybe the podium is at the door and that's where the thing, and then there's right there, so it's taller, not down on a chair, so they see it when they walk in. Draw attention.
In theory, the rest made a good point, yes, kind of talk to me about on the side. We probably need some clean pens and dirty pens, we'll use whatever to the next,
Or just keep it back.
Right. Do some nice Cros-Lex pens up there.
Sounds good.
All right, anything else? Good. All right, last is the presentation of administrative guidelines. Article 3, Anti-Harassment and Non-Discrimination. Article 4, Students. Article 6, Finances. And Article 7, Community Relations. Well, that's going to come from Superintendent Gilbertson.
So as the board has probably read multiple times in the correspondence and the board notes over, well, definitely this year and before, administrative guidelines are a really important function that the district, well, let me just word it this way, we've been working on it for quite a while. One of the benefits of working with Clark Hill is we have their attorneys that are able to leverage their experiences and look at different drafts of other districts and provide sample administrative guidelines that we can adopt. As you saw in the board policy, this is not something the board needs to approve, but it's my responsibility to share them with you. So right now, what you have is, as you just identified, President Gordon, Article 6, Finances, Article 8, Community Relations, and Article 4 on students are all, and I should say the Anti-Harassment Administrative Guideline under Article 3, I believe that was Section 18, are administrative guidelines that we would like to put into effect by the end of this meeting and beginning of the month. They can be revised, and if any revisions occur, I would let the board know that, obviously. There will be more administrative guidelines coming on this. Ann Vanderland, from the Clark Hill Law Firm, has really been the primary source. Mr. Irvin's helped too. But this is an important function that us administratively need to fulfill, not only by board policy, but by sharing these with you. So rather than going into all the details of them, you have them. They will be posted on the website. We went back. They're not required to do that, but we, as we landed in these conversations with the legal counsel, that's the best way to go. Full transparency. Everybody can see them. The administrators will get them all tomorrow as well, and did come active. So that's it. And it's pretty exciting to have their help to get to this step, because it's a very labor-intensive process to get administrative guidelines done without the help of the law firm. I'm very thankful for your support to have Clark help us, so thank you for that.
Questions of Dan? Any discussion?
Thank you.
All right, then last on our agenda is to adjourn.
I'm making a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Moved by Amy and support by Dennis to adjourn. 8:53. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. I'm sure there's no opposed. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight.